Okay, so the Rebbe, we're up to V'yuvan Zeh. The Rebbe is explaining that there is a difference the way the Oir Pnimi comes down and the way the Oir Makif comes down. He talked about the chiluk between the Oir Makif, two levels, the Oir Makif HaKorev, which is an Oir Yoshor, the Oir Makif Harochik, which is an Oir Chayzer. And now he talks about that while the Oir Pnimi, the Oir Makif HaKorev is an Oir Yoshor, but it's not the same as the Oir Pnimi Mamish. And now he's going to demonstrate that the difference is that an Oir Pnimi comes by being diminished, dressed up, and obscure, uh, which is less. The Gil of Ermakiv does not comes a lot and not be slapshus v'helam. And he brings now a demonstration. We know that Chochmo Bina, which is called Av Va'em, that's the beginning of Atzilus, the beginning of Ishtalshelus. They come from Keser. They come from the level of Keser. Now, how it comes from Keser, Nimshach, to Chochmo Bina, to Avaim. Now, what happens is when it comes down to Chochmo Bina, Avaim, that it's a father and mother, so that should be a yichud, to give birth to the midos that follow, so that Chochmo Bina will be together and there will be the Hoiloda, the birth of the midos. So there is basically two functions of Chochmo Bina, what they get from Keser. There is one to become Chochmo Bina, and there is one that Chochmo Bina should be together. This the Rebbe will explain in different places. It explained where and how does Chochmo Bina of Atzilus get from the level of Keser. So some places it says they get it from the level of Mazel. What's the level? Keser is called the Yud Gimel Mazolis, Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. Those are the 13 Tikkunei Dikna. Those are the 13 strands of the beard. Those are called mazel. A mazel is a hamshocha b'derech cyrus. Cyrus means a hair. A hair has a minimal amount of life force in it, in the hair. That's why you can cut it off. So the way it gets from keser to chokhmah, it comes through the mazel. Through the mazel means through the hair, which means a very limited and measured small amount that goes through the level of mazel, through the level of the mazel. So that means the way Chochma Bina of Atzilus get from Keser, they get it through the mazel, they get it through the hair. But in another place it says that Chochma Ubina actually dress up the the hands of Arich, meaning not they get from a strand from a mazel, but they actually dress up, they get from directly. But this is the difference between the Oir Pnimi, while the Oir Pnimi is a diminished light, comes down, and the Oir Makif is when it dresses up the Zerayas of Avah. Okay, let's look inside. We'll see. The Rebbe will explain here in detail. The Yuvon Zeh, We'll understand this mema shemotzinu, that we find shalipa'omim iso. Sometimes we find avo, which is aveim chochmo bina, yoinkin mimazlo. They nurture from the level of mazel. Mazel is the level of sidus. It says in those places, Sha'abo yoinek memazel v'noitzer. So you have the 13 tikkun dikna, the 13 gimel midas arachamim, Hashem kilrachum. So it says v'noitzer chesed la'alofim. So Abba Chochma nurtures from the strand, from the mazel of v'noitzer. V'noitzer chesed la'alofim. The ema and the level of bina yoinek, that nurtures mimazel v'nake. It's chesed lofim v'nake. That v'nake in the pasuk, that's the strand from which ema, from which bina gets. So the way they get from keser, from the level of arich, is that Abba gets from the mazel v'noitzar, and Ema Bina gets from the mazel v'nake. That's in some places, which basically means the way Chochma Ubina get from Keser in a way of a mazel. But Ulepa'amim Isa, sometimes we find Sha'aba ve'ema malbishim lizroyes da'arich, that the Abba ve'ema Chochma Ubina, they dress up the hands of Arich. That means that they get from the level of Arich in a way that they dress them up and not through a strap. So the Rebbe explains now. Hayiniko da Abba ve'ema mimazlo, the fact that Chochmo Bina nurture from the mazel, he bechino tachtoino yoiser, that is a lower level, mizeh shemalbishim lizroyes da'arich, from the fact that they dress up the hands of arich. Getting from the mazel is on a lower level than dressing up. Shaharei hayinika mehamazolos. When we talk about nurturing the yinika, that comes from the mazolis. What is the mazolis? So, structured by a human being, it's the hair over the head. That's from where the nurturing of Abba ve'ema chochmah comes. Shehem bechinas sidus. They are the level. Mazolis are the level of sidus. He hamshochas ha'ora bilvad. That is only a hamshocha of a ha'ora. Ba'al yidei hefsek hagul goyles. Also, the skull interrupts. So, how do you get the oir to the hair? The light in the hair is energy is very little, and it comes through the interruption of the skull. The skull is in between the hair and arich itself. Masha'en kein masha'abo ve'emo malbishim zroyes da'arich, as opposed to the fact that chochma ubina, they dress up the hands of arich. Hare inyan hislapshus hu shemalbishim as etzem amehus. So the idea of hislapshus is that they dress up arich itself. So the dressing up is a closer and a higher relationship to arich than that which they nurture from the hair of arich. So while we're saying that getting from the nurturing from the here, from the mazel, is on a lower level. Umekol mokoim leidach gisa. But on the other hand, inyan hahislapshus hu beoifen sha'oir mislabish umisalim. When we say that Chochma Ubina dress up the hands of Arich, they dress it up means that it doesn't come through. The idea of dressing up the hands of Arich, who be'oifen, it's in a way, shaha'oir mislabish umisalem. It's in a way that the light dresses up and hides, because it becomes a garment so that the light of Arich doesn't really fully come down into the Avei, Mash'enkin Inyan Hayinika Memazla, as opposed to the idea when you nurture from the hair, although this is just nurturing just a ray alone, but mikol mokoim harei ze ribuy oir. Still, this is a lot of light. It's not diminished light. It's taka only nurturing. It comes through the hair, but there is a lot of light there. Ve'einay mislabish umisalim klal. It does not dress up. That light does not come obscure. It's not misalim klal. It does not dress up. It doesn't obscure. It comes down biribuy oir. That's the way it comes from the mazel. So while it's less, but in a way it's more, because you get a lot of oil. The hislapshus, while it's the essence, it's not a yinika, but it obscures the hamshach. Beloche, and therefore, bichdei sheyiye yichud abba ve'emo. In order for it to be the yichud of Chochma Ubina. We want Chochma Ubina to have this union, to produce the children. We want them to produce the midos. Harei ze davke al yidei nirkoso mehamazl. This comes specifically by nurturing from the mazel. The hahamshocha shenimsheches le avei mizroyes da'arich. That hamshochet that comes down to Chochma Ubina from the fact of the hands of Arich, which Chochma Ubina dress up Arich, al yidei sha'avaim al bishim oisum, by Chochma Ubina dressing them up, he be'oifen sha'al yidei zeh nase hischalkus de Chochma Ubina. So that's in a way that there becomes a separation of Chochma Ubina, which means we want Chochma Ubina to be together in order to give Hayloda, but the Hamshoche, which comes from they dressing them up, that brings the separation of Chochma Ubina. Then Chochma is one and Bina other, and that comes from dressing up the different hands of Arich. Shemibchinas chesed da'arich nimshach ha'chochma. From chesed of Arich comes chochma. Umibchinas gevura da'arich nimshach ha'bina. And from gevura of Arich comes bina. Difference, separation of chochma ubina, not the union of chochma ubina, the separation, the individuality. Chochma comes from chesed of Arich, and gevura comes from Bina comes from the Gevura Darich. Comes Bina. Veheim bischalkus zemizeh, and they're separated one from the other. Mashein ken hamshocha shenimsheches lavo, as opposed to the hamshocha that comes to Aveim al yidei shenei yonkim imazlo, by nurturing from the level of the mazel. He be'oifun shein bis avdus ubischalus. That's in a way that the Chochma Ubina are united and included one from the other. So there's the two hamshochas from Arich to Atzilus to Chochmo Bina, the Hamshocha from Mazel brings union for Chochmo Bina to come together. The Hamshocha that is Malbishim, they dress up this Reis Arich of their separation. V'hainu, so that happened in V'hainu, Shaloi zu bilvad, shaloi nasa bahem, his chalkus al yidei hamshochem hamazel. Not only is there no separation, division, through coming to the mazel, elo shemitzad yinikosa mimazel da'arich, nasa yichud, but because they nurture from mazel da'arich, that brings about a yichud, v'hiskalus kam b'schalkus shoyse b'mekoidim. Even in the schalkus that they had before, now once you're mamshich to them from the yenika of arich, from the mazoles, then that brings them together so that they're no longer different. To the extent because they nurture from the mazal of arich, nase inyan ha'hayloda, that brings about the concept of birth, lahaylid b'doimeloi, to give birth similar to him, so that the birth is similar to the chochma ubina v'tama davarhu. Okay, so this is all explaining how these two different hamshoches have a different impact. But why is that so? And the difference is because that's hamshochas makif, and that's hamshocha pnimis. The yenika is hamshocha pnimis. The halbosha lizrayas avo, that's makif, and that explains what we explained before. That makif comes obscure, and the pnimi comes in a way of ribuyoy. So that's what he says. So what's the reason of this? That even though these royas are, even though they're in arich, which is higher than ishtalshalus, mikol mokoim ba'arich gufa hu bechinas seder ishtalshalus. But in arich itself, it is in an order of ishtalshalus. The zroya is the arich, as we said before, the chesed and gevura of arich are, even though they're higher than ishtalshalus, so they're in a level of makif. But mikol mokoim ba'arich gufa u'bechina seder ha'ishtalshalus. Within the makif, it's in an orderly way. It's in a way that it evolves, which means, like he said, that even though it's a makif hakorev, but there is still a level of makif, but the hamshocha comes down in a way of ishtalshlus, hainu er pnimi, b'lochei, and therefore, oifen his galusom hu b'slapshus v'helam. That's why the way they are revealed is dressed up and obscure. Ma'ashe'en kein ki shaham shocha hi ma'arich atzmai. But when the hamshocha is from arich itself, sheba'arich gufa hu makif shalamayla mihishtalshlus. Within arich itself, it's the makif that is higher than ishtalshlus. So there is in arich, which is ishtalshlus, but then there is the makif in arich itself, which is higher than ishtalshlus. Hinei hagam shaham shochi ba'ofen shel yenika. So even though it is in a way of yenika, very little, ha'ora levad, mazol is v'saidus, it's only mazol is v'saidus, mekomokoim, Einze beoifun the slapshus v'helam. So that's why it's not the slapshus v'helam. Basically, within arich, from the level of hishtalshelus, you get a lack of hidden, but from the level of makif itself in arich, you don't get it in a way, even though it comes mazolas v'sidus, but yet it's not dressed up and obscure. So these are the two hamshoches from arich to avaim to chokhmah bina of atzilus, from keser arich to chokhmah bina. So while you get from the higher level of makif in a way of yinika, but it's in a way of gilui oir, which, and on the other hand, the level of arich, which is the hishtalshlus of arich, over there it comes in a way of obscurity. But this is all in makif hakorev, because arich is makif hakorev, atik is makif harochek. So he says, Gam arich atzmoi hu makif hakorev. But arich itself is the makif hakorev, which is makif hayoshor, the oir straight. V'lochein his galusei hi be'oifen shel yenikas ha'ora levad. That's why when it's revealed, it's only in a way of a mazel. Yenikas ha'ora levad, you just nurture it from the ha'ora. Mashe'en kein atik, as opposed to atik hu makif harochik. That's a distant makif, which is makif the erchoizer she'en begeder gilu klal. That's the makif of the returning that is not the klal revealed. The kasher nimshach azai hu nimshach b'chol atzmusei. And when atik is nimshach, then it comes down with its entirety, with its whole essence. So from the makif hakore, from arich, it comes down in a way of yinika, but makif harochik, which is er choizer, which is atik, over there it comes down nimshach b'chol atzmusei. V'zehu hachiluk shebein medalig umekapitz. And this is the difference between, we're saying medalig is beregel achas, and mekapitz is b'shtei raglayim, pass over and jump. With 1 foot medalig, that is talking about arich, and mekapitz is talking about atik. Shamshocha de medalig hirak regel achas. The hamshocha of medalig is just 1 foot. But it does not come down as it is in its essence. As we said, 1 foot is still on the ground. You're only getting dugmas. That would be similar. Get from mazl. That's the level of medalik. Now, I don't know if you noticed over here, there's a little aleph after the word dugmas. This apparently are the notes that that the Rebbe made in addition to the notes. The Rebbe didn't look over the whole Maimer, but the Rebbe gave a few notes. So these are the notes that the Rebbe made. The Rebbe talks about dugmas, and there's several notes. So the aleph, the Hebrew letters, are the Rebbe's addition. Okay, but hamshocha the mekabel shtei raglov, and when we have jumping with both feet, shal yidei neta kol gufoy, hi hamshocha memakev arochik. That whole body is moved. That is hamshocha from the makev arochik. And then shekasher nimshach, when it comes from the makev harochik, azai nimshach b'chol atzmusei, then it's extended with his whole essence. Meaning that all of the makif harochik is nisgala. V'zehu shemedalig al hahorim koy al yidiyas siyas Mitzrayim. So we divide. Medalig al hahorim talks about Yitzias Mitzrayim, and Kapitz al Gavois talks about Matan Torah. So this is why Medalig al hahorim goes on Yitzias Mitzrayim Kimayim Razal al Posik Medalig al hahorim Dilig al Kates. That Hashem jumped over the mountains, he jumped over the gates, which means he didn't wait for the 400 years. He let him out after 210 years from Mitzrayim. That he was medalig, so that refers to Mitzrayim. That goes on Matan Torah. The Gil of Yitzias Mitzrayim is the straight makif. Vagilu the Matan Torah, which would be the level of arich in this explanation. Vagilu the Matan Torah, who agilu the makif hachozer. That is the level of makif hachozer. The ad lahagilui, until the gilu the anoichi mishanoichi atzmus. Not only makif hachozer, but in higher levels, to the level of atzmus anoichi mishanoichi. Okay, let's leave it over here, and we'll be mamshich tomorrow, Be'ezus Hashem.
Okay, see you soon. Bye bye.